Hey, wrestling fans, this is Birdman Coca Beware, and you listen to the Card Subject to Change podcast. That's right, you don't want to miss it, and I guarantee you, you can't beat it with a stick, you can't whip it with a switch. Don't even try! Well, sometimes love feels just right. It feels so real. It feels just like a power driver. Yeah, a power driver. That's what I'm talking about.
So me personally, I'm actually a lifer. I don't remember a time that I wasn't watching professional wrestling. Even my mom explains it to me as when I was a small child, you know, I would just stop in front of the TV and just sit and watch, and I'd just be quiet. It just totally zoned in. So I always been a wrestling fan. And as I get older and even learn more about the business, it's like I continue to fall in love with it for different reasons.
Just it blows my mind. And I'm like tugging on my mom's pants and stuff. And I'm like, Mom. And she's like, yeah, what? And I go, I want to do that. And I'm like pointing at the TV. Well, she looks and she goes, oh, you want to be like Macho Man and wear the cool sunglasses and say, oh, yeah, and do the elbow drop? And I go, no, I want to be the guy throwing snakes at people.
Yeah.
And now, your hosts of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the For Frequency's Sake Tag Team Champions of the World, the Wizard CZ, and never wrong, Nick Bull. Hello, one and all, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Card Subject to Change podcast, the podcast by the fan for the fan. Of course, I am your host, never wrong, Nick Bull. Joining me is my tag team partner, co-tag champ of the For Frequency's Sake network, the Wizard CZ. Wiz, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm excited. We've got a fun show in store for people here. We've got the head honcho of Iron Spirit Pro coming on. He's going to talk about a big show they've got coming up. And I'll bring him into the studio right now, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm glad he's here. We've been focusing on, the big time guys here recently. We reviewed Money in the Bank, Forbidden Door, of course, NXT's Heat Wave, which was a great show. And of course, we're coming off a good Raw and a good Dynamite. We're going to focus on the little guy tonight, and that's what we love is independent wrestling. That's what we have on this show. There he is. It's Logan, the owner of Iron Spirit Pro. He's got to be the most relaxed guest we've ever had. That chair looks comfortable. I'm jealous. It beats the crap out of the wood stool that I'm sitting on. I'm jealous, Logan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, even though you called me the little guy. I'll take it.
No. I
got beef. You got heat already.
I meant independent wrestling is the little guy as opposed to WWE, AEW.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. We'll try to keep it nice and relaxed. Yes, indeed.
That's how we do it. That's how we roll.
I'm jealous of that chair, man. I want that chair.
Good chair.
That could be my office chair.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sitting in my office chair here at my desk, and I would love to trade up with you, Logan. That chair is fantastic.
I will tell you, I think my number one goal here tonight was to have the best audio of any interviewer you've ever had. So I had to bust out the fancy microphones and everything. So I just want you to appreciate that.
You sound great.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So, Logan, let's start things off. I'm going to steal Nick's thunder and steal his question. We ask every first-time guest on the show, what got you into wrestling?
I was into it as a kid, as like a really, really young kid. I have a horrible memory, first off, but I can't remember like a specific time, like a specific match or anything like that. But I was a really young kid, really into it. I should have thought about like just in the next room, I have like yearbooks of me like 6 years old with like my little Ric Flairs and stuff. I was born in 89. So I was watching when it was like 94, 95, like early 90s WCW mostly. So I don't know really what got me into it, but it was like, that was kind of the kid era, if you will, of the WWF. So just all that stuff probably got me into it. And then I was into it up until probably like 2001, when I was like, 12, 13-ish, and then just kind of naturally gravitated away from it. got into other things, and I didn't come back to it until like 2011-ish, just kind of randomly. So, I don't know what got me into it, but something drew me back, that's for sure.
You can't remember what brought you in, but what did bring you back in 2011? Do you remember what brought you back? Kind of like you, I got into it as a young kid, got away for a little bit, but came back to it. Absolutely love it. What brought you back? Because you're older, maybe a little harder to draw you back in than it was when you were a kid.
Yeah. Funnily enough, I got a gag Christmas gift from my parents of one of the WWE games, video games. And they're like, oh, they probably bought it on sale or something. And they're like, oh, you used to watch this? Like, this could be fun to play. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And then some time went by and I popped it in and I was like, oh, this is fun. And it's like hitting big, cool moves. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, this guy looks cool too. And like, just something about it, just like, and like, I had no idea who the guys were. Like, I think I knew the name John Cena, but I don't think I know who John Cena was. And like, okay. I didn't know, I was like, who's John Cena? Which one's Randy Orton? I have no clue. But just something about playing that game a whole bunch just like really got me back into it for some reason. And then, I slowly started to watch it on TV and I was like, I think I could get into this. And then, so I was like, 21 or something, 20, 21, 22. So that was like also the perfect time to get into like the more obscure wrestling, like the Ring of Honor, Japanese wrestling, that sort of stuff. Yep. And so I just like kind of fell into it and realized it was like this whole other world, plus all the history of it, like going back and watching the old stuff that I would have had no idea of when I was 10 years old, so just like a conglomeration of all this stuff and, like trying to catch up and finding all the different kinds of wrestling and all the history, kind of all at once brought me back.
You said something there that stuck out to me and it kind of like sparked something in my mind. You talk about the big ones like WWE and WCW at the time, and then you found this whole other world with like Ring of Honor and stuff. I remember like getting introduced to Ring of Honor and learning about it and like, oh my God, there is another world of wrestling that I need to learn about and know about. Like, I just remember like having to get my hands on every DVD, trying to learn all these different guys that I never knew even existed, and how cool was a time period that was.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it has to do, this is kind of weird, but like I really get interested in like weird subcultures and their histories and their institutions and their hierarchies and stuff. So it's like you have this whole system of wrestling of these different companies and they all have their own history. They all have their own titles and there's guys jumping around. And it's like, even just like learning about it is interesting to me. You know what I mean?
I agree. Sure. I love knowing like when wrestler A was with this company and then he went to this other company and what he did in between and what was different from each. Oh, I'm with you. I love learning like about a new product and like you said, new subcultures, new people, new wrestling. That's awesome, dude. I'm glad you brought that up.
So what are you gravitating towards now? And you can't say Iron Spirit Pro. That's too easy. Yeah. But what grabs your attention in the wrestling world today?
I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that I don't watch a whole lot of wrestling anymore. I think when I cut cable a couple of years ago, it was harder for me to follow the weekly stuff. And then just being in it so much, my interests in other things like, waxes and wanes. So, and being in it, you're exposed to a lot, you kind of get burnt out easily. So I honestly don't watch a whole lot of wrestling right now. Like I said, I'm embarrassed to say. I think because I like weekly wrestling so much, I like weekly TV wrestling. And so if I don't follow it every week because I don't have cable or I don't have the right streaming service, it's really hard to get back into it. Like I like the stories and everything, so I can keep up. I follow all the stuff on social media, so I know what's happening.
Sure.
But just like going and watching a random match doesn't really do it for me anymore. So yeah, it's like I said, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit that, but I don't really watch a whole lot of wrestling. The wrestling I watch outside of live is the wrestling I watch with my 4-year-old son, because he loves wrestling more than I do. Like, he's crazy about it. So that's opened up a whole other world of teaching him about stuff, just random matches on YouTube. So interestingly enough, that's the best part of watching wrestling right now for me, is watching it with my son.
I mean, how cool is that to have a 4-year-old, to be 4 years old and to be able to go watch live wrestling shows? I mean, that's such a cool thing, and, you know, have the pipeline with you. I'm going to ask you something. Give us a brief overview of the subculture. What is the subculture of Iron Spirit Pro? You talk about you like studying the different subcultures of different wrestling and stuff. What would be like the subculture of Iron Spirit Pro for an outsider looking in?
Like behind the scenes, kind of, it's a very relaxed environment for sure. You know, we're going 6 years in now, so we've had guys come and go. We've had guys who were like the stars before, or the mainstays before, and now we have the guys who are on top now, and some of those guys were youngins back then, and now they're the top guys, which is always fun to see. But I always say it's a very relaxed atmosphere. I try to tell the guys, like, I'm humble, and I say that it's kind of low key, right? Like, we're not even a huge indie company by any means. You can come here and just have fun. The crowds are always really good. They really get into it. You know, you can try new stuff. If you're a green kid, you can just get some reps in. Try to work some guys who are, you know, at least a little more experienced than you. Just kind of without a lot of pressure, which obviously they all want to do good. They probably all put pressure on themselves, and I want them to do good and all that.
Sure.
But it's, I keep it casual, and it's fun. And we've never really had a lot of huge egos or anything like that behind the scenes. You know, we've never had really issues with the talent or anything like that. So I just say, you know, come have fun. We're kind of low key, but, you know, make of that what you will. And then I also like to tell the guys, like, we kind of cross paths with a lot of different territories, if you will, because like here in Bloomington Normal, we're kind of like 2 to 3 hours from a lot of different areas. So you have Chicago guys, Quad City guys, St. Louis guys, Indianapolis, Louisville, that can kind of all meet in the middle and maybe don't always cross paths. And, you know, like in the Chicago scene, a lot of times there's some divisions of like, you can only work for this company, you can only work for that company. Come down here, I don't have any ties to those companies, so I don't care. I'm gonna have whoever work whoever. So I think that's a lot of fun for guys who, we'll see people of like, oh, I've never been able to work him quite yet, so they get to do that here.
So how did Iron Spirit come into being? What was that moment that came to you and said, I want to run a wrestling company?
Yeah, so the joke I always say is I started Iron Spirit Pro because I couldn't start a band. As that was like my main thing in high school. Actually, it's probably what got me out of wrestling when I was like 13, as I picked up a guitar and never looked back. And so I like played in bands in high school and early college and stuff. And I graduated, and then I moved here to Bloomington Normal in 2014. And I didn't know anybody outside of my wife, because she was from here. So we moved here, and like the only thing I wanted to do was start a band. And I was watching wrestling, and I was a big fan and all that. And then I started going to more indie shows, and I see you got a Dreamwave poster back there, which Dreamwave was a huge inspiration for me. LaSalle is only like an hour away. And that was really my exposure to like indie wrestling, you know, outside of Ring of Honor, like if you could even call that indie wrestling. So I started going to a lot of those shows. Couldn't start a band as much as I tried. Nobody was running shows in Bloomington Normal, and it didn't make any sense to me because it's a big population area.
Yeah, it is.
I would see things in like LaSalle, which is a tiny town, but they have this big wrestling company. I would see, you know, kind of not great shows in other towns or okay shows in like small towns around. Anyway, no one was running in Bloomington Normal. So I'm like, well, there's, you know, a gap in the market right there from the business side, at least. Nobody was doing it here. I didn't have anything to do. I'm the kind of guy who like likes to have projects and things to work on, bands to like write songs for, or wrestling companies to create. So I'm just like, you know what? I got nothing else going on. I'm going to do it. I'm just going to run. And my idea was just to run one show, and, you know, as a sort of bucket list thing. And if we lost our ass on money, then, well, at least I could say I did it once, you know. But we did well, and So we're like, well, we'll just put a name on it and just keep running shows until we go off the tracks, and that hasn't happened quite yet.
What has changed the most for you in these 6 years of running this company, from having that goal of just wanting to have a show to now having regular shows and a following, and you've developed, you've got that market, there in Bloomington Normal?
The biggest thing that has changed probably is the different places we run events, because people in organizations and stuff like that are coming to us to book us for shows. So we run a lot of shows, of course, like our sort of our own standard shows, that these are ours, they're long, they got our championships and all that. But we also do a lot of sort of like festival shows, or we get hired as entertainment for certain things. Like just last weekend, we were in Peoria in front of the Peoria City soccer game. So they just brought us in as like an hour worth of entertainment before the game. So we do a lot of things like that more and more, which are kind of their own beasts, but like we're just so ingrained in the community. I said Peoria, but we're so ingrained in the community here in Bloomington Normal that we have so many people coming to ask us to do shows for their festivals, their events, whatever, even their spaces, which is just great. Like it shows that we're part of the community, and people know us, and people take us seriously, because pro wrestling can sometimes have a certain connotation, for better or worse.
Sure.
So to have people accept us as pro wrestling is fantastic. So that's probably the biggest difference now.
Talk about some of those venues where you've been. Talk about your home base and some of the venues you've been. I know you mentioned the one in Peoria. Where all do you guys travel to on a regular basis?
Our home base is what's called the Normal Community Activity Center. It's a community building that's run by the town of Normal Parks and Recreation Department. We had our very first show there, and we are there, all the time now. Well, actually, it's become more like in the colder season, we do the indoor stuff at the community center, and then during the spring and summer, we do a lot of outdoor stuff. But our home base is there, and then we do our big show coming up, which I know we'll talk about later. July 20 is our show at a bar here called the Station Saloon. We do it outdoor in the parking lot for like a big outdoor event. Couple other smaller spaces in town. Like I said, we do a lot of festivals. We do something in Uptown Normal, just like right on the square. Traveling wise, we've done a little bit. We did just go to Peoria for the first time as part of that soccer match. We were booked on the Pekin Marigold Festival in September, which is a huge festival. It draws thousands upon thousands of people. We ran a couple shows in Champaign-Urbana over the years. We did one really early on, and then we did one last year. Yeah, last year, which is a tough nut to crack, that area, which I would love to get into again. That's just more of like finding the right venue and all that. But we've branched out a little bit, but Bloomington Normal is definitely our home base.
So our good friend Stryker is in the comments, and this may be a really hard question for you to answer.
Bring it on.
But he asks, what is your favorite match that you have booked so far?
You're right. That is a hard one. Oh, shoot.
And if you have more than one, that's fine too.
I'm gonna say my favorite match that shoot. I'm gonna say, and it might be a little recency bias, when Craig Mitchell won the Iron Spirit Pro Championship in December last year or January of this year, when he beat CJ Esparza for the title. Just because it was a huge moment. It was a kind of a shocking win. It was a very definitive win for a big monster of a villain, and just the crowd went crazy, and just the shock and awe on their face, and I'm just like giggling to myself, like knowing it's coming and all that. So just like to build up, again, CJ had the belt for a year, and he's like the hometown baby face, and it took him forever to get the belt and all that stuff, and like top guy, and then just to have like the villain beat him was just like, oh, it was beautiful.
How hard is that? You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And to keep a straight face, because you know what the reaction's going to be.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. I try to hide as much as I can when that stuff's going down. It's difficult, yeah, for sure. And it's hard. It's hard when I want to do stuff like that, and I kind of want to work the boys too. I want to like not put it on the run sheet of like this is what's going on because I want to kayfabe the boys to make them
Sure.
pop too. But it's kind of hard. But yeah, it's difficult.
You mentioned Dreamwave Wrestling earlier. You see a poster I have here in the background. That's kind of how we've opened the door to you. We're friends with DB from Dreamwave. I just want to ask you as a fan to another fan, what's who are some of the people you've seen wrestle up at Dreamwave? I know they bring a lot of cool names up there.
Yeah, I mean, back when I was going in like 2014 and 15, it was actually really interesting because it was like right now they're kind of like a super indie where it's like 90% fly-ins. Back then, it was kind of the other way around, where it was like, who's going to be the fly-in this time? You know,
Sure.
Who's the big indie name coming now?
Sure.
So I remember seeing like Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa before they were NXT guys. I saw, I mean, the Young Bucks were there a handful of times. This was during Bullet Club, but they were there. I remember them doing a lot of stuff. They had some really funny. They used to come out to Mbop by Hanson, which was just hilarious. So they were big. Those are the ones coming to mind. But yeah, that was definitely my exposure to indie wrestling.
You're listening to The Card Subject to Change, the podcast by the fan for the fan. We are powered by Low Pies Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and protected by Jared Zook of Country Financial. We're joined by Logan from Iron Spirit Pro this week. I believe we've had a couple Iron Spirit Pro talent in the past, have we not, CZ? Of course, we've had DB on the show. I'm trying to think who else we've had. We've had from Iron Spirit Pro. Yep, Zach Abstract's been on the show.
Both members of the 815, Gunner Brave, Logan, or Sabotage Sean Logan. That's what I was trying to say. I almost said Logan Paul, but we haven't quite gotten to that level.
We haven't got Logan Paul yet.
We're not. This isn't the Chris Van Vliet show. So, but finish your thought, Nick. I'm sorry, I jumped in because I was.
We've also had Solomon Tupu on the show as well. So we've had some fair share of guys from Iron Spirit Pro. We'll talk about the big event here coming up in a little bit, but talk to a fan that's never been to an Iron Spirit Pro show. What are they to expect when they come in? I know CZ has been to one. I have not made it down to one yet, but I'm going to before the end of this year. That's what I want to do is get down to an Iron Spirit Pro show before the end of this calendar year. But what is the first time fan that's never seen an Iron Spirit show? Iron Spirit Pro show? What are they in for? Give us a little paint us a little picture.
Yeah, if they're already a wrestling fan, I'd say that you're seeing the next crop of guys come up. Because we do book a lot of younger talent. Maybe super young, maybe a few years in. But guys like Solomon Tupu and all the 815 guys who've had at least a few years of experience. But it's the next crop. I'm more often talking to non-wrestling fans or maybe just like WWE fans who've never seen indie wrestling. And, I got to say, well, have you ever seen it in person? Yes. Okay. Well, have you ever seen it in a small building where you're 5 feet away from the ring? Because it's completely different. Right. And then I always like correlate it to like college ball or something. You're seeing the guys before they get into the majors. But yeah, like I said before, I kind of it's low key, but it's also that's helpful for some of the guys because they feel a little more comfortable to try new things, to go all out, and not have a million eyes watching them as much as we'd like to have a million eyes watching them. But so yeah, it's just a lot of fun, and like I said, there's a lot of crossover of territories, of different areas where you may not see these two guys wrestle anywhere else just because of logistically, they'd never cross paths. So that's what we get for. I mean, I like the sort of, there's a little bit for everyone kind of, there's some serious stuff. There's some big guys, there's some small guys, high flying, strong style, whatever, a little bit of comedy. I'm a big comedy wrestling fan, like
absolutely.
I like to make people laugh. So a little bit of everything and just like a fun night out,
So Logan, we're going to be taking a break here in just a minute, but before we hit the break and come back to talk about your big event, I want to ask you, where can people find your shows? Because I know you just launched something here recently where if they haven't seen a show live or they want to go back and watch a show that they were at, talk about where they can stream your events.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming that we got our video kind of up to speed. We got backlogged by some technology issues and some other things, but we finally got the majority of our events up on our website, ironspiritpro.com, or you can use the shortcut video.ironspiritpro.com. And yeah, that's a site where you can go and you can both buy the digital copy or you can rent the digital copy, which I think is pretty cool for a more affordable price. So yeah, that's where you can go check out our old events. It's video.ironspiritpro.com.
Logan, you talk about you were a company, you've been around for 6 years. I got to ask this because, I like hearing company stories of how they got through it. How was COVID on you guys? How did you get through that time period? I know it was a killer to so many groups. I know some companies kept alive by doing some stuff in-house, but how did you guys handle COVID and get through that?
We just flicked off the switch and just went dark, and then when it was over, we just flipped on the switch again. I mean, I never really entertained the idea of doing shows without fans or anything like that. It just never seemed worth it. Like, I took COVID very seriously, and I was just like, well, they tell me I can't go outside, so I'm not going outside. Well, you don't got to tell me twice. I'm a homebody, so that's perfectly fine. But so like I never worried about that, and I'm a pretty financially conservative guy, like business wise. We don't take a lot of risks. So there was no way I was going to do something like that and like potentially lose a shitload of money. Like there's just no way that's happening. So, it sucked and we all missed it, but it's one of those things where it's like, there's just so much else going on in the world that this is the last thing I'm worried about, But I did buy a wrestling ring during COVID. That was kind of weird. But
oh, there you go.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know when this is going to end, but I can't pass up this ring. So I'm going to buy it and sit on it for another year. But
right. Let me follow that up and just ask, what was that first show back like? What was the atmosphere coming back after being gone for so long?
It was something else. It was fantastic. It was our first show at the Station Saloon, that venue we're going to talk about. So that was fun. So because we were like looking for an outdoor space because it was, COVID wasn't over, right? It's still not over, but we're like, let's be outside where people can social distance and all that. So that was exciting, being in a new space. Just coming back, it was, what also really sucked is that I think it was January of 2020. Is that when COVID started? The January is when we crowned our first champion. And that was like a year and change after we started. Like, we didn't have a champion for a long time because I hate when new companies pop up and they crown a champion their first day. I'm like, you're the champion of what? It doesn't behind it. So like, okay.
I got to agree with you there. I got to agree with you.
So like, we waited like over a year before we got a championship, and then we had the match, crowned the champion, and then COVID happened. So it was like, got the wind out of our sails. So it was exciting to get back into that. It was just, it was kind of like super excited. Obviously, everyone was pumped. It was a great show. It was a little bit of, are people going to come back because of COVID, or did they just forget about us? Do I even remember how to do this? All the little things that you got to do to set up a show. I'm going to forget something. It's a new venue, which always has its own issues. Yep. So it was, a crazy night, but it all worked well, and it was, super awesome to come back.
Excellent. Well, we're going to pause. We're going to take a quick time out. We got a couple of spots to run to promote our sponsors, our network, and the upcoming Toys for Tots Fantasy Football League. But on the other side of the break, we're going to talk with Logan about the big event that's coming up here in just over a week. Stay with us here. We will be back in just a couple minutes.
Well, sometimes love.
And of course, it helps if I hit the right button and not play our open for the second time.
That's all right.
Here we go.
That's all right.
Football season may be over, but for frequency's sake still has you covered for all your sporting needs. Tune in every Sunday when the best professional wrestling podcast around, Cards Subject to Change, gets you caught up on everything inside the ropes. They won't miss a count with weekly analysis and interviews. More into auto racing? We've got a double dose for you on the track. Tune in to Fast Money with Rod Villagomez each week and win some money with the quickest bets in all of sports. Want more insight from Pit Row? Check out the Green, White, and Checkered podcast where they give their insight on everything happening on and off the track. Need your basketball fix? Points in the Paint has you covered with live shows every other week looking at everything in the association. Backed by popular demand, we have the return of The Payoff Pitch, FFSQC's baseball show, covering you on news around the MLB. If you're missing football, don't fret. Mark and Dan still have you covered in the football lounge. Missing Joe Winkle? Probably not, but he's still here talking sports on Educated Ignorance. Football season might be over, but we've still got you covered. For frequency's sake, you know what we mean.
For frequency's sake is brought to you by Durham Remodeling, serving the Quad City area's remodeling and repair needs since 1973. Clint's Draft House, grab a bite and a pint. 7th Street, Moline. Lopez, New York-style pizza served up by the slice or pie, Davenport. Lifted Energy, energy drinks, coffee, donuts, and more. #GetLifted. Atomic Sports Cards and Collectibles. Sports cards and memorabilia, vintage clothing, hats, pennants, and more. Ryan Allison Tattoo. Step into the vibrant world of tattoos with Ryan Allison. And A Cut Above, offering quality custom woodwork designed specifically around our customers.
Hey everyone, we are checking out at Walmart. We've got ourselves 4 full carts. We are got plenty of toys here. We're going to see what our final number is here in a couple of minutes. But we've got a couple of nice folks here checking us out. But hopefully we'll got plenty of stuff for everybody to get everybody a nice happy Christmas this year.
Football season is just around the corner, and once again, For Fantasy's Sake is running its annual Toys for Tots Fantasy Football Leagues. Don't miss your chance to be crowned the best fantasy football player in the Quad Cities and help raise money for Toys for Tots of the Quad Cities. The For Fantasy's Sake Toys for Tots Bowl is loaded with great prizes and even better local celebrity participants, ranging from professional athletes and news personalities, and even former Iowa Hawkeye fullback, SCW Pro and Pro Wrestling Trailblazer, Steve Manders. To sign up, just visit For Frequency's Sake on Facebook or Twitter and follow the links.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show. Nick, there were some handsome-looking fellas in that last photo on the Toys for Tots promo. I can't speak for anybody else, but best-looking guys on the network right there.
It might have been. It reminds me we're not that far away from Christmas. We're not that far away from shopping for those Toys for Tots. And I'm glad to have the fantasy football leagues registering right now. Of course, the one called Manders is representing our podcast for the network. You can play along with him in the league, along with so many others. Glad to have Steve Manders on board for that. He's a great friend of the show. He's been on here a few times, and he's also giving back and helping out with Toys for Tots. It's a great thing. I'm glad that he's part of it.
Me too. We are, of course, Card Subject to Change, powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and protected by Jared Zook, Country Financial. Podcast by the fan for the fan. And tonight, if you're just tuning in, we are joined by Logan, the big cheese, if you will, of Iron Spirit Pro. And we're just going to jump right in, Logan. Talk about this big event coming up on July 20th.
Yeah, July 20. Well, let me just first off give a shout out to our sponsoring partners, if you will. In the cadence of the Card Subject to Change podcast, I have come prepared. July 20 will be air conditioned by Custom Air Company, fixed by Individualized Repair, cooled by Mandy's Snow Shack Shaved Ice, entertained by the Sit Down Marks podcast, primed by Top Dog Grooming, digitized by Bam Jack Computers, and most importantly, intoxicated and slightly disgusted with ourselves by the wonderful beverage known as Malort.
Wow,
man,
he nailed that. That's an excellent job.
Thank you.
That was beautiful.
Very good.
I have listened to this podcast before, gentlemen.
I know. Thank you very much. Before we talk about the event,
it.
I want to ask you one thing. Where did the name Iron Spirit Pro come from? I mean, it's a unique name. It's a different name. It's not just Midwest Illinois wrestling. You know,
Right.
it's something unique. It's something different. How did you come up with that name?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted something different. Of course, like brainstorming and just, making a list of 200 names. Didn't want to do the old, MXW, whatever, like initials.
Sure.
I think it was kind of like a mix of like Iron Will, Fighting Spirit kind of thing. The local high school here is the Iron Men.
Yep.
Just something in that vein and just something that rolled off the tongue. Something that I kind of like. It doesn't have wrestling. I kind of like that it doesn't have wrestling in the name. Like sometimes it's a little hard because it's like you got to explain to people what it is. I don't know. I just thought it had a cool sound. It kind of almost had like a Japanese wrestling kind of sound to it.
It does. It
I
does.
don't know. It just kind of rolled off the tongue, and the words made sense. And Iron Spirit, Fighting Spirit, Iron Will, kind of thing.
I think it sticks with you because it's different. It's got a different sound to it, and it's not wrestling company ABC Pro. It's Iron Spirit Pro. It's something you've never heard of before. I like it. I think it's cool.
Thank you.
I think it's cool.
You took the cookie cutter and threw it out the window.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Well, July 20th, big event coming up for you guys. Talk about this, your biggest event of the year. I want to know, the history of this event and why it's so important to Iron Spirit Pro.
Yeah, like I said, this was our first event back after COVID, was at the Station Saloon. And it kind of just naturally became our biggest event of the year. Like, as we saw the numbers grow, and a lot of people seemed like that was the only show or their first show of ours that they went to. Like, that was the first one I went to, and I started going, or like, oh yeah, I saw you guys last year at that place. It's a bar, so like it has its own built-in audience and stuff. People know it as the place they go to for the bar, and so like that helps. So it just kind of naturally, like, draw wise, became our biggest show. So we're like, okay, well, we're gonna treat this like our big show, like this is our mania, if you will.
Sure.
Just kind of happened naturally, which is awesome. So this is our 4th year there, and it gets bigger and bigger every time. Yeah, so we're super stoked. I mean, if you want to start talking about matches, right off the top, we start with the big one, the championship match. Unfortunately, Craig Mitchell was our champion for the first half of this year. He did vacate the title whenever it was, May-ish, due to injury. He's doing all right, but unfortunately, we weren't exactly sure how long he was going to be out, especially if he was going to make this show or not. So unfortunately, he did vacate the title. So we have been without a champion for a couple months. So the big match, is to crown a new champion. And we have it booked right now as a triple threat match. So it's going to be Trevor Outlaw versus Solomon Tupu versus Shane Boucher. In what I think is, if you saw that match on any other card, you'd be like, that's the low key going to steal the show. Now this is the show because it's for the strap, right? So
Sure.
Want it to be the show. But yeah, super looking forward to that one. All three guys got stuff going for them. They all had ups and downs throughout their career at Iron Spirit. Trevor Outlaw is a guy who, like, he comes to a territory and just takes over with his mouth. Like, people just automatically start to hate him, which I love. Like, half the time I don't even care about the wrestling. I just want to see you, like, interact with the fans and rile them up. So, he's been doing great at that, and people hate him, and he's shifty and he's clever, and you just never know what he's going to do. Solomon Tupu, as you guys know, big powerhouse. He's been on a freaking tear in our company and elsewhere. A lot of people see him as one of the next guys here soon. That could very well be the case. And then I think Shane Boucher is kind of the wild card. I think he's kind of like the dark horse, if you will. He's been with our company for a long time, but he had so many ins and outs. Like, he would come and then he wouldn't be on for 6 months, and then he would be in a weird little random match and then a thing here and there. But it's like every time he got so better every time. The crowd kept getting behind him. And this last year, every time he's come back, like, the crowd is just so behind him, and he's just like so good, and he's gotten so good. And this is his first time going for a title for us, and his first main event. So I think he's kind of the dark horse. And looking at these three guys, I just don't know. It could go any way, really.
Well, styles make fights, right? And all three of these guys are vastly different. to what they bring to the ring, inside and out. You mentioned Shane Boucher as the hometown SCW Pro organization. We've kind of seen Shane turn that corner and evolve before our very eyes. So I know exactly what you mean, how he's kind of, just gotten really good.
Yeah. Every time I see him, or like a year ago, like I'd book him and I'd be like, man, you're getting really good. And it'd be a while. And then I'd book him again and be like, you know what, man, like I get so happy when you're here. Every time I book you, like, I don't know why I don't book you more. And he's like, well, yeah, dude, like, hell yeah, book me more. It's like, you know what, you're right. Like, I don't know. It just, for some reason, it's starting to click and it's so fun to watch.
It's almost, you can almost tie it into when he cut his hair. It's like when he cut his hair,
dude, when I saw his hair, I was like, what did you do? And then I saw him in person. I'm like, damn, dude, you sexy. And now I'm like going back and watching old stuff with his long hair. And I'm like, nah, that was a poor choice. Like, of course, everyone wants to be Shawn Michaels, but dude, you got your hair, you look good, man.
Right.
So that's Logan, you talked about that match on any card being a show stealer. Take that match aside. What match is going to steal the show? Who's going to come out and have people walking away saying that was amazing?
I think, it's unfortunate that the title match is kind of cold because, it's like we just vacated the title. We got to throw something together. We're putting a bunch of hot top name talent in that match, but it's coming in kind of cold. Whereas, we've booked Ezio Orlandi and Xavier Sky in an I Quit match. So these two guys have been at each other's throats the past 4 or 5 months. They've traded wins. There's been some dirty deeds here and there. Just last weekend in Peoria, we posted a video. Unfortunately, Ezio attacked Xavier Sky in the parking lot. We're just trying to do a simple interview, and this guy couldn't control himself. So, shit's breaking down. There's a lot of tension going on. There's a lot of heat going into that match. And knowing those two guys in an I Quit match, I mean, that's, in my mind, one of the most brutal matches there can be, and we're not a company who does a lot of no DQs or weapons and stuff like that. So when it happens, there's got to be a reason. And, Xavier called out Ezio at the last show and wanted to make him quit, and he accepted. So we're going to see how that goes. But that one's got carnage written all over it.
When you introduce the I Quit stipulation, it's almost like you're seeing guys willing to do the extra thing they don't normally do to win a match, right?
Yeah, that's what it's all about. And, you give them a big open space, like the Station Saloon. Like I said, it's out in the parking lot in this big, crazy space. And so they know they can do whatever they want out there, essentially, so it's going to be insane. Yeah, I'm a little fearful.
Take us behind the curtain here before you talk about the rest of the show, and without spoiling anything. When you got a big show like this and you're building for it, how far out do a majority of the matches that are going to be on the card? Give us that insight.
Yeah. So to pull back the curtain just a little bit, because I do like to keep a lot of this stuff close to the vest, to be honest with you.
I agree.
A lot of our booking decisions are sadly just like logistical and scheduling. And that has been like the saddest thing to learn, is that, as much as we try, like we anticipated to have Craig Mitchell as our champion for a little bit longer, and then he gets injured. Like, you can't blame him, of course. But like, I feel like that happens so much where we try to book longer term things, and there's and people get hurt. People can't make the shows. Like, there's so much that can disrail it. It's sad, but we try as much as we can. Especially the more and more we go on, we have a longer outlook on our schedule. We know our next year and that kind of thing as much as we can. Early on, it was kind of like, month to month, like, okay, now we got this date, now we got that date. Now it's like, here's the year. Let's plan it out as much as we can with ideas, general directions. So yeah, we try as much as we can to have an idea of where we're going.
Well, I appreciate your honesty there, because I think, I think not only does it affect you, I think it affects a lot of independent companies, is logistics. Like, when it comes down to it, you got these grand ideas of things, but if wrestler A can't be on that show, it kind of changes things. So, yeah. I mean, logistics is a big thing. I appreciate your honesty.
Let me ask you this, Logan. If you don't want to reveal the order of the match card, you don't have to, but The opening match is always the tone setter for any wrestling event. Do you know who is going to set the tone at the big show coming up next week?
Honestly, I don't. I don't know that quite yet. The order of the card, sometimes I know this far ahead of time, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm still working on it. I got a general sense, obviously like the title match is going to go on the main event. That's our big match, and it always is. But no, honestly, I don't know. But yeah, the opener, and I probably overthink a lot of those kinds of things like match order, but it's fascinating. And we kind of have a formula that we like, but we've experimented with different things to some success and some failure. But that opening match is very important. Yeah, for sure. It used to be, I would kind of warn guys sometimes, like in the early years, I would say, if you're on the opening match, there's a 50-50 shot they're going to be dead. They're either going to be dead or they're going to explode, like when you first come out. So don't panic if they're dead, because I don't know. It's so weird. Like a crowd is like a living thing. It's like, and every crowd's unique from show to show. Some days they are just dead. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's the Cubs lost that day. Maybe it's whatever, maybe there's traffic getting in, who knows? But some days they're just dead. And so don't take it personally. Just do what you can to like bring them up. I say that, but the past, I don't know, year and a half, they've just been popping from the first match. Like everyone's just been so alive. Yeah, but we try to have a hot opener for sure.
That's something we kind of talk about on this show, CZ, is like the first match. When, I'll ask you, Logan, when do you think the first match lost its stigma and it's just as important as the main event now? Because at one point, maybe in the last couple of years, it's kind of turned a corner where the opening match is a big deal. I mean, as a wrestling fan, it's always a big deal, but like big picture wise, it does set the tone for the show. Most often the first match is really the best match on the card because, sometimes it just captures that moment. I think it's the anticipation of the show starting, the fans ready to pile on something. But I think this stigma that the opening match is no good really turned a corner here in the past couple years.
Yeah, that is actually fascinating. I've never really thought about it like that. And I don't know what made the turn.
And I don't either. It's just kind of cool.
I wonder if it's something like this new crop of guys are maybe in some ways less egocentric and more thinking about the whole show and thinking like, if I put you in that first match, I'm putting a lot of faith in you to set the tone of the show. And, I'm not going to send out two green kids who don't know what they're doing and shit the bed. Like, you got to know what you're doing. You got to get the crowd up and you're setting the tone. And that takes a lot of, experience and know-how and skill. And it's something completely different. And then, you're done and then you can get changed and then you can chill the rest of the night. So like, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, if I wasn't in the main event, I want to be in the opener and be able to.
That's what I've heard. A lot of people say that. Yeah, if I'm not last, then put me on first.
Yeah, I mean, if I was a wrestler and if I wasn't main eventing, I'd want to be in that first match so I can enjoy the rest of the show just like everybody else.
And before intermission, so you can go out at intermission and get your picture money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're thinking like a wrestler does. Absolutely. You've talked about the championship match.
Yeah.
Three-way. You've talked about the I Quit match. What else are we to expect on the card for July 20th?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you the little scoop here. I'm going to announce a match that just came together recently. So we don't have a graphic for it yet, but for the tag titles. So our boys 815.
Yep.
Have been the champions for, I did the math the other day and I already forgot, but a year and a half, essentially 18 months. I counted the days. I forgot what it was. Have just been on a tear nonstop, beaten everybody. It's getting hard to find teams for them to wrestle because they've just beaten everybody, and they're so sneaky and they're so deceptive and devious. And gosh darn it, they make me so angry because they keep getting away with it. Why do they keep getting away with it? 815.
You're the one to talk to about that.
But anyway, so we're bringing some out of state talent known as the Premier. If you're familiar with the Premier, out of Kansas City, old Campbell Myers and SK Bishop coming in for the first time. Been trying to work with these guys for a long time. They have a lot of history in the Midwest for sure. But finally bringing in those guys, see if we can bring in some ringers to take the belts off 815, because I've about had enough of their shenanigans and their tomfoolery, I'll tell you right now. But that is going to be the big tag team title match, and just knowing those guys, both sides, and knowing that this is the big show, this is outdoors, this is the big one. They're going to go all out, and it's just going to be insane.
So big announcement here on the Card Subject to Change podcast. Logan from Iron Spirit Pro announces the Premier will be challenging the reigning champs of about a year and a half, the 815, in a tag title championship match. It's 3 big matches we've talked about on this show. I wish I wasn't out of town on that day because I'd love to come down and watch this show. I'll ask you this selfishly. Some SCW Pro guys have wrestled for you. I know, I'm trying to think, Eric Esnight, Malik Champion, the Devil Dog Dustin Mosley. Am I missing a few? Are there any SCW Pro talent on this roster or on this show besides Shane Boucher?
Shane, well, I mean, both the 815 guys come out of Black and Brave, essentially.
Yep.
I mean, Eric Esnight is going to be on this event. He will be back. Out of the guys, I think off the top of my head, I'm trying to look at the list and remember where they're coming from. I think Eric Esnight is the only one outside of who we've talked to so far. But yeah, Dustin Mosley is a guy who's been doing more and more with us. He's going to be on some shows later this year. Malik Champion, I would love to have back. Yeah, that's a guy who really showed out at this event last year, I think it was. Yeah, it'd be great to have him back too. So yeah, SCW, Black and Brave, that whole area has been a real great pool of guys for us to choose from.
Who will Eric Esnight be taking on the show? Actually, I think he's been on the past month. So
that has not been disclosed yet. That is
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
We do like to leave, some matches.
Absolutely.
For the event itself. Yep.
Give us some other names. Who else are we going to see for those coming out to the show?
So we also have booked Angel Escalera out of the Chicago area, who's been a fantastic, kind of like we talked about earlier, guys who are young and then come here and get some reps and like get known and all that. He has been awesome. He's a super entertaining wrestler. He's great for the opening match. He comes out, he does some like Puerto Rican dance thing and just gets the crowd really hyped. He's good for like the festival shows we do. He is just awesome. So he's a really great worker. He's going to be there again. I've seen him, I feel like, nonstop these past 2 months. I see him like every other weekend. But he's great. B.A. Malkin is a local guy here out of Bloomington Normal. Been in the business for maybe a year and a half, probably not 2 years. We were like the first indie show he ever saw. Like our very first show was the first indie show he ever saw. And I didn't know that until after we started booking him. And he's like, yeah, that's how I got into it, which blows my mind, makes me feel old. But he is, and I'm probably going to like embarrass him, but you see like local guys who are like, yeah, I'm a wrestler, I'm a trainee, I'm going to come help out. Okay. He come help set up the ring. Like, okay, you're a nice guy and all that. And then it's like, okay, we'll give you a shot. And then like he wrestles and you're like, oh shit, dude, you can actually wrestle. Like, I thought you were just like some dude, but like, no, you can wrestle. And you're like really good and you're jacked and you're throwing guys around. So he's like a little pet project of ours, I would say.
He's like your grassroots guy.
Yeah.
He's been there since the beginning, right?
Yeah. And he's local, so he sells tickets, which again, the businessman, like, hell yeah, brother. So he's got everything going for him. I love Brendan. So he's going to be on the show for sure. Eric Esnight, like I said, who is very unique, in his character and everything. Brings something different to the show, that's for sure. And then 12 Gauge is going to be on the show as well, if you're familiar with 12 Gauge.
Yep.
Does a lot of tag teaming with us for the hype, but he's going to be in a singles match July 20 as well. So 12 Gauge, and that is all on my list currently that I will discuss.
When you talk about the hype in 12 Gauge, we're going to have Hunter Holdcraft on here in a few weeks on the show. So kind of cool how those coincide. But they're a fun tag team to watch. I've only seen them work as a tag, never seen them work as singles. So that's going to be very interesting for 12 Gauge on your show there on the 20th.
Absolutely.
So Logan, we've talked about extensively Iron Spirit. We've talked about the show. Like Nick said, I'm going to be out of town with Nick. I wish we could go to the show, but I intend to get back down there before before you know it, as soon as I can. Any final thoughts that you want to give to our fans and your fans who are watching or listening?
Yeah, I would just say, if you can only make it out to one this year, this is definitely the one to come to. It's the big one. We keep saying it's our mania, if you will. There's going to be a new champion crowned, so that's kind of Iron Spirit Pro history right there. We've only had 3 champions in 6 years, right? We tend to have long championship reigns, and so you don't see title changes a lot. So yeah, I mean, this is the big one. It's we try to. I mentioned all the sponsors we have. Malort is going to be there, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with Malort, the spirit, the alcohol Malort out of Chicago.
I've heard stories.
I've heard of it. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, that's the thing. Is like people whisper about it. It is it's an experience, but like getting them as a sponsor, I just feel like my life is complete. Like my life's work it just cracks me up. So they will be there. I mentioned Mandy's Snow Shack, which is like shaved ice. We got Tony's Tacos coming out, taco truck. Like we try to make it a big thing, right? It's not just here's a little wrestling show. It's like this is a big night out under the stars. The weather. Been watching the weather, should be perfectly fine. It's just I think it's become a staple of like Bloomington normal calendar of events. And it's really awesome. So if you're gonna come out to this one. If you've never seen us before, come out to this one, and I promise you will be hooked, and you will be coming out to all the shows. But otherwise, yeah, check out ironspiritpro.com because, like I said, we're coming to Pekin, coming to a bunch of other festivals in the area this summer, and then back to our home base at the Normal Community Center at the latter half of the year. Yeah.
Where can people follow you on socials?
Yeah, all the socials are just at Iron Spirit Pro, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and ironspiritpro.com as well.
Awesome. Well, Logan, I want to thank you for coming on. This has been a lot of fun talking. It's rare that we get to talk to someone who's running a show. Talked to a lot of wrestlers. We've talked to a handful of referees, but this was a rare treat to get another side of the business. So I want to thank you again.
And to be able to talk
really
to and CZ and be able to talk to them before their biggest show of the year,
Yes.
Getting a little, and we got a match announcement on here, which was even cooler. So we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come on here and chat with us before your biggest show of the year.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me. I appreciate you guys interviewing a lot of our roster, like we talked about. It's really cool seeing some of those guys get some more exposure elsewhere. So, yeah, I really appreciate it. Appreciate all the support you've given Iron Spirit Pro, and glad to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's going to put a bow on this episode. We'll be back at our normal time Sunday. We have someone, I believe, who's also been an Iron Spirit Pro coming on, but we know him from SCW, and that is one John Bonhart. He'll be in the studio. And then a week from today, we announced it, but we didn't say the date. A week from today, I'm so excited to have Jake Christ in the studio. That's going to be an experience, and I can't wait to talk to him. But for my tag team partner, Never Wrong Nick Bull, I am the Wizard CZ. You have been tuned into Card Subject to Change, the podcast by the fan for the fan. And as always, we're powered by Lopez Pizza, built by Durham Remodeling, colored by Ryan Allison Tattoo, and protected by Jared Zook, Country Financial. We'll see you back here Sunday for another episode, Card Subject to Change.